This is Staccato from the Second Street Dreams audio network. I'm Judelin Gibson. This week, I have a note dotting the classical music landscape in Prague in the 18th century. What a night it must have been in 1787 when Mozart premiered his opera Don Giovanni. No one can control how the audience will react, though sometimes in the 18th century, sections would be paid to get their reactions right. Mozart's era often left it unclear who was meant to be in charge of this broadly purposeful chaos. That's how author Patrick Mackey described it in his book, Mozart in Motion.
So it begins in Prague on a particular night in the late autumn of 1787 and begins with an opera first night, which, with such a sort of, it's an extraordinary sort of narrative set piece to be able to try to bring to life as a writer. It's a real sort of gift because of the amount of people involved, the amount of color, the amount of energy, investment, excitement, anxiety, nerves, etc.
In this book, another one on the summer reading list, Patrick Mackey isn't just writing about Mozart and his music, he's describing Mozart's musical world.
One of the great things about writing about Mozart was it felt like a way of writing about everything else too. It was a very diverse historical scene, Europe at the time, with lots of different types of societies and lots of different ideas of society, all jostling around each other, and all of them so caught up in music and the excitements of music and stylistic changes and the philosophical and intellectual questions that music and musical practice and opera, of course, in particular raise.
In Mozart in Motion, Mackey goes back and forth in time, like this particular favorite of the author. His Sinfonia Concertante for violin, viola, and orchestra from 1779, when Mozart was 24 years old. Mackey goes further back in time, all the way to the 1760s, when a young Mozart was on tour with his older sister and parents.
It's partly because I guess that's the point of the title, Mozart in Motion, that I had from his childhood onwards, I had a sense of music as being something that didn't just take him back into the recesses of his grand creative mind, although it certainly did that, but it also flung him forwards out into the world, out into this extraordinarily bizarre life of wandering around playing and making things up as he went along and having to adapt to different audiences, adapt to different needs. It was a very diverse historical scene, Europe at the time, with lots of different types of societies and lots of different ideas of society.
But then he dares to compare one 20th century performer and composer to Mozart.
I can't resist mentioning one of the chapters that I like the best, which is from the fact that I'm a very omnivorous music fan, pop music and rock music and American pop music in particular. And like a lot of us, I'd sort of developed a habit of thinking of referring to Prince as the Mozart of Minneapolis. This is sort of almost like a cliche in the sort of pop writing world to think of him as a sort of Mozartian figure. So I wrote a chapter on the song Little Red Corvette in its relationship to Mozart that I really loved writing, because it gave me a way of really making sure that my writing was at least trying to keep up with like the most obviously sort of exciting and sort of ravishing and telling music of our time too.
The name of the book, Mozart in Motion by Patrick Mackey. Find the links on the Staccato page on secondstreetdreams.com. That's Staccato. I'm Judelin Gibson on the Second Street Dreams audio network on secondstreetdreams.com.